The world appears to be entering a new and increasingly complex phase of geopolitical uncertainty, where diplomacy, military signaling, and fragile peace processes are unfolding simultaneously across multiple regions. From reported diplomatic movements involving the United States and Iran, to rising tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, and renewed instability concerns in Ethiopia's Tigray region, global fault lines appear to be under pressure at several critical points at once. At the center of today's developments is a growing question shaping international attention: whether the world is witnessing coordinated efforts to manage crises, or the early signs of wider geopolitical instability spreading across multiple regions. In one of the most closely watched developments, reports indicate that a new round of diplomatic engagement may be taking shape between Washington and Tehran. According to statements attributed to the White House, senior U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, alongside Jared Kushner, is expected to travel to Islamabad for further discussions with Iranian officials. The reported movement is being interpreted by analysts as a signal that back-channel diplomacy between the two countries remains active, despite years of political tension and strategic mistrust. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was reported as indicating that the delegation is expected to depart on Saturday morning, a development viewed as reflecting renewed urgency in ongoing diplomatic efforts. International media outlets, including Reuters and CNN, have also reported that Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is expected to participate in the discussions after confirming travel plans to Pakistan. From an analytical standpoint, the selection of Islamabad is drawing significant attention. Pakistan's capital is often viewed as a strategically neutral meeting point, positioned between South Asia and the Middle East, while remaining distant from direct political pressure between Washington and Tehran. However, expectations remain cautious. Analysts note that previous rounds of U.S.-Iran engagement have often struggled to produce lasting breakthroughs due to deep-rooted mistrust and competing strategic interests. As a result, this latest diplomatic movement is being closely observed rather than interpreted as a confirmed shift toward resolution. At the same time, tensions in the Gulf region appear to be escalating. Reports attributed to U.S. President Donald Trump suggest that U.S. military forces were instructed to shoot and kill Iranian small boats operating in the Strait of Hormuz. Analysts interpret the reported directive as a significant escalation in maritime posture within one of the world's most strategically sensitive waterways. The Strait of Hormuz remains a vital choke point for global oil flows, with a substantial share of international energy shipments passing through its narrow passage. As a result, even limited disruptions in the area carry immediate implications for global markets and energy security. On the Iranian side, leadership figures have responded by emphasizing national unity and rejecting narratives of internal division, signaling an effort to maintain cohesion under external pressure. However, questions continue to surround Iran's internal power structure following reports of major leadership disruption during the early phase of the conflict in February. Observers note that authority appears increasingly distributed among political and military institutions. Elsewhere in the region, reports suggest that a ceasefire arrangement involving Israel and Lebanon has been extended following diplomatic engagement linked to Washington. Although official details remain limited, analysts view this development as part of broader efforts to prevent simultaneous escalation across multiple conflict zones in the Middle East. With business and technology news analysis, Ethiopia appears to be advancing its industrial and clean energy agenda, as new large-scale projects have been inaugurated at the Hawassa Industrial Park in the Sidama region. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is reported to have officially launched several industrial facilities, including the Toyo Phase 2, Origin, and Lumentech solar factories, alongside the HZ gas plant. The inauguration is being described by officials as part of a broader national strategy aimed at accelerating industrialization and expanding renewable energy capacity. According to government communications shared through official channels, the newly launched solar manufacturing facilities are expected to contribute significantly to Ethiopia's clean energy ambitions, with an estimated combined annual production capacity of 11.3 gigawatts. This development is being positioned as a key step towards strengthening the country's renewable energy sector and reducing long-term dependence on external energy sources. In addition to energy production, the HZ gas plant is reported to play an important role in industrial supply chains, with production capacity projected at approximately 900 tons of oxygen, 40,000 tons of nitrogen, and around 7 tons of hydrogen annually. Officials suggest that such outputs are expected to support both industrial operations and broader economic activities within the manufacturing ecosystem. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, in remarks attributed to his social media statement, is reported to have emphasized that the projects represent both immediate employment opportunities and long-term economic transformation. The developments are said to have already contributed to job creation in the region, particularly within the industrial park framework. He further noted that while the current production capacity reflects significant progress, it also highlights what he described as Ethiopia's broader untapped industrial potential, suggesting that these projects form part of a larger national development trajectory. From a broader policy perspective, the Ethiopian government has in recent years intensified efforts to expand industrial parks and renewable energy investments as part of its economic modernization strategy. The Hawassa Industrial Park Initiative is widely viewed as one of the key pillars in this national transformation agenda. Analysts observe that such developments reflect a continued focus on positioning Ethiopia as a regional manufacturing and clean energy hub, while also addressing domestic employment demands and industrial diversification goals. However, they also note that the long-term impact of these projects will depend on sustained infrastructure development, investment stability, and integration into global supply chains. For now, the inauguration at Hawassa is being viewed as another step in Ethiopia's ongoing effort to strengthen its industrial base and expand its renewable energy footprint, within a broader vision of economic transformation. Reports emerging from Sudan indicate a deadly escalation in violence in North Kordofan, where a drone strike has allegedly killed civilians and intensified concerns over the worsening conflict between rival armed forces. According to the Sudan Doctors Network, 7 people were killed and 22 others injured following a drone attack on the city of El Obeid. The group reported that the strike involved what it described as suicide drones, targeting residential areas, resulting in significant civilian casualties. The medical network has alleged that the attack bore the characteristics of deliberate targeting of populated neighborhoods, suggesting that the objective may have been to maximize civilian harm rather than strike military positions. These claims have not been independently verified on the ground. The same source has further described the incident as a serious violation of international humanitarian law, warning that continued attacks of this nature are deepening an already severe humanitarian and medical crisis in the region. Responsibility for the strike was attributed by the network to the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, which it called on international actors and humanitarian organizations to pressure into halting attacks on civilian areas. It also appealed for urgent support to local health facilities in El Obeid, which are reportedly struggling to cope with increasing numbers of casualties. As of the time of reporting, the RSF had not issued an official response regarding the incident or the allegations made against it. The latest development comes against the backdrop of an ongoing conflict in Sudan that erupted in April 2023 between the National Army and the RSF. The confrontation, largely centered around disputes over military integration and political control, has since expanded into a nationwide crisis. Observers note that the war has resulted in tens of thousands of deaths and displaced an estimated 13 million people, pushing large parts of the country into severe humanitarian distress. Several regions are also reported to be facing worsening food insecurity, with fears of famine conditions emerging in some areas. Analysts continue to warn that the prolonged nature of the conflict, combined with the increasing use of drone warfare and urban targeting, is further complicating efforts to reach a political settlement. For now, the situation in North Kordofan remains tense and uncertain, with growing international concern. Reports from Somalia indicate a worsening humanitarian situation linked to drought conditions, with tens of thousands of people reportedly displaced in just a handful of districts since the beginning of the year, and broader nationwide impacts expected to be significantly higher. According to assessments attributed to the United Nations Migration Agency, the International Organization for Migration, IOM, nearly 62,000 people are said to have been displaced across 5 districts, including Baidoa, Danail, Kada, Diansor, and Dulo. These areas were among those surveyed in a limited assessment covering a small fraction of Somalia's districts. The agency reportedly indicated that a large majority of recent displacements in these locations are linked to worsening drought conditions, which have contributed to crop failure, livestock losses, and severe water shortages. These combined pressures are understood to be forcing vulnerable populations to abandon their homes in search of basic assistance. While data from the full country remains incomplete, estimates cited by IOM officials suggest that the total number of drought-related displacements across Somalia could already be approaching several hundred thousand. One assessment referenced by agency officials places the figure at around 300,000 people nationwide, although this remains an estimate based on partial surveys. Even with expectations of seasonal rainfall during the ongoing GU rainy period, which typically runs from April to June, projections still suggest continued displacement. Estimates indicate that as many as 125,000 additional people could be forced to move if conditions fail to improve significantly. Humanitarian observers describe the situation as increasingly fragile, particularly in areas where communities are already experiencing repeated climate shocks. In several affected regions, livelihoods are reported to be collapsing as water sources dry up and agricultural production becomes unsustainable. It is also being reported that many displaced families are moving toward urban centers such as Mogadishu and Baidoa. However, these locations are said to be under growing pressure, with existing displacement sites and urban infrastructure struggling to absorb new arrivals. Aid officials have reportedly warned that many families arrive after exhausting remaining resources, often after losing livestock and crops, further compounding humanitarian needs upon arrival. Analysts note that the situation reflects a broader pattern of climate vulnerability in the Horn of Africa, where recurring drought cycles continue to drive displacement and deepen food insecurity. For now, the humanitarian outlook remains uncertain, with growing concern that without sustained rainfall and expanded aid response, displacement and hunger levels may continue to rise across Somalia in the months ahead.